Okay. So what we are going to discuss in this Azure security. So we are not going to start the entire thing from the security point of view. So how we start is we start from the basics. So if the first 2-3 classes will be on the basics. So actually understanding what is cloud, why we are moving into the cloud, and all those stuff. So first 2-3 classes, it will be boring for someone, and it will be somewhat lag for some other people. Okay. So we will understand what is majorly about the networking. So whenever we talk about the security, the major concern will start from network point of view. So once we have the network is perfect, then we will move to the identity and access management. So how to create the user, how to assign the roles, how much granular level we can assign the roles, and all those stuff we will start by the basics. So we will understand from the basics how to create a user, how to create a group, how to integrate the users, how to add the users into the group, and all these things. So in this training, the entire training, first we will start with some concepts. Okay. So the first thing what we will see is we will see about the identity and access management. So how we need to manage our identity and access, like no one should hack our credentials. So that is very, very important. So I will deep down, uh, deep down what we are going to discuss in identity and access management. The next thing is we are going to see about the secure network. So how we are going to secure the network. And after that, we are going to see about the virtual machines and other stuff. So compute is nothing but virtual machines, storages, and databases. So how we are going to secure these things as part of Azure. The next one, we are going to see the security operations, something like WAF, network firewalls, okay, the additional thing, Microsoft Defender, and all those stuff, okay. And after that, the last one is how to if you are preparing for any certification. So I will be helping you in that. And if you want any sample resumes, so I will be providing you after the entire course. So now, once we go into the next one, which is managing identity and access management. So I think, as you know already, all major of the organizations are using Active Directory. So whenever you are logging into any of your application, mostly now, no one is using standalone credentials for all your applications. So what you are doing, you are integrating all your applications as a SSO, single sign-on. So once you integrate that SSO, how you are managing that entire SSO? So how you are getting the particular access to your application, how your granular level of permissions you are giving to the users, and how you need to enable the multi-factor authentication, how you give the conditional access, okay, from which location you need to access that application and from which location you should not have the access to that application. So all these things we are going to discuss as part of identity and access. So if you see here in Azure Identity Platform, we are going to understand what do you mean by authentication and authorization. So simply, if I want to give you an overview about what do you mean by authentication and authorization, before that, we will be discussing about something called as CIA triad. So I think there is one person who is from cybersecurity. The basics, whenever you want to go to cybersecurity, the first thing they will tell you is what do you mean by CIA triad? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So this is the major part which we are going to discuss as part of Azure authentication and authorization. So confidentiality is nothing but how much secure we are keeping our data. So in order to secure our data in any platform, okay, it may be AWS, it may be Azure, it may be GCP, irrespective of hardware or it may be cloud, or it may be your on-premises. The major challenge is what type of authentication you are providing to your user and what type of authorization you are using. Simply, if someone don't know what do you mean by authentication and authorization, nothing but authentication is nothing but it will tell you who are you. So you need to provide your identity. That means whenever you log in into any application, what you do, you will provide your username and password. So this is nothing but you are giving the authentication. So with this username and password, you have multi-factor authentication as well. So you will have authenticator app, or it will trigger you the call, or it will send you one OTP, or it will trigger a mail to your email ID. So there are so many ways which we are going to discuss on this, the entire workflow. Okay. So when it comes to authorization, it will tell you what you can do. So whenever you have, so once you log in into the application, so what permissions you have in order to perform the activity. Something like there are someone from here who are database administrators. So database administrator want only database related activities. So they will not know the network. So what I will do for database administrator, I will provide the database access as the administrator, and for other things, I will provide them the read-only access so that they will not do any alteration or they will not do any modifications to the network, VMs, or any other components which we have in our Azure. So that is the first thing. So now coming to the second one, we have something called as AD tenant and AD subscription. So if someone is aware of Azure, so this is the basic thing which we need to understand. So whenever we talk about the tenant is nothing but that is our account in our Azure. So whenever you create any, so once you log in or once you sign up into your Azure, what it will do, it will create a tenant for you. Once you sign up into the Azure, it will create a tenant that is nothing but it is an account. And once you create the account, it will have one subscription. So what do you mean by a subscription? Subscription is used for multiple purpose. Okay. So majorly we will be using subscription for our cost related activities, and subscription can be used for different environment wise as well. Okay. Suppose if you have 4 different subscriptions, what I can do, one subscription I can use it for my development account, another subscription I can use for my QA quality test environment as well as my production environment. And in the same way, I can use my subscription for costing also. So if you want to see the what is the costing for your development, you can just go to that particular subscription and you can use that one. So that is about the AD tenant and AD subscription. That is about the second point. Coming to the third point, Azure AD tenant and AD subscription association. So I think you know that under a single organization, we will have multiple organization units, right? So organization unit is nothing but the something like if I say X is an organization and OU will be one vertical regarding to the sales. So who will do the sales for that organization? HR is different OU organization unit, which is another vertical, who will hire for freshers and all those stuff. And there will be another vertical related to IT. So who will be working on the IT related activities. Okay. So organization units is something which we will be discussing on the Azure AD tenant and Azure subscription association. So for multiple organizational units, what you can do, you can have a multiple subscriptions as well. So that we will see how we need to create as part of our demos. So when we go into the demos, I will be showing you the entire picture. Okay. So now next one, creation of users and groups. So I think you already know identity is nothing but users. After that, dynamic groups and administrative units. So administrative units, we call it in Azure. And if you have some knowledge on AWS or GCP, normally what we called it as, OU in AWS. And coming to GCP, we called it as folders. Okay. We will call it as folders. So you know the hierarchy, right? In AWS, we called org. Under org, we have organization unit. Under organization unit, we have accounts. And under accounts, we will be creating the resources. In the same way, if I want to talk about Azure, in Azure organization, we called it as management group. Under management group, we have administrative units. Under administrative units, we have resource group. And under resource group, we will be creating all our resources. So this is the entire architecture, or we will not say architecture. We will call this one as the hierarchy of the Azure cloud. Suppose if you want to say in the Google, it is the same. We will call it as organization. Under organization, we will have the folders. Under folders, we have projects. And under projects, we will be going and creating the resources. So this is the hierarchy of the major public clouds which we are using in our market. Okay. So coming to the dynamic groups. Dynamic groups is nothing but, so we will be creating a dynamic group depends upon our resources. So majorly when we use this dynamic group is, if you have multiple VMs and for that particular VMs, if you want to provide any functionality, then we will be going and using something called as dynamic groups. So this we'll discuss. So there is nothing much in that. So it is nothing like roles and policies. Okay. Coming to the AD connect and hybrid connectivity. So whenever login into your organizational laptop, suppose if you are working for an X organization, whenever you log in into your laptop, how you are connecting to your organization? You are connecting via AD Connect. So your device is attached to your Azure Active Directory, Azure AD. So I will show you how you can, from your laptop, how you can attach your laptop to your AD. So how you are getting the, see, you know, right? You will be getting some security patches of your operating system, or if they are pushing any software to your machine, how they are pushing. So how, because you are on the different network, they are on the different network, but your device is connected to your Azure Active Directory. So they will have something called as group policy for your devices. So whenever they apply any group policy, it will automatically send it to your laptop. So we will be seeing how this AD connectivity works and hybrid identity works. Hybrid identity or external identity are one and the same. There is no differentiation. So hybrid identity and external identities are nothing but, hybrid means in your on-premises, if you have ADDS, Active Directory, Directory Services, and in the same way, if you are using Azure Active Directory, now they have changed the name of your Azure Active Directory to Entra ID. So you need to remember this name. So if you are using these both options for your identity, then we call it as hybrid identity. And if you are talking about the external identities, if you are integrating with any third-party applications, then we will be seeing how we need to configure on the external identities. So this is about the next 2 points. Next, coming to privileged identity management, conditional access and AD, passwordless authentication. So privileged identity management is nothing but you are providing the access. So these two are interlinked. So what you will do, identity protection is nothing but you are giving something called as user risk management and sign-in risk management. So whenever you talk about user sign-in, user risk and sign-in risk, if your user credentials are got, what we can say, what is the terminology, that one? Compromised. Okay. So what will be the issue? That will be taken care by user risk. Coming to the sign-in risk, what it will do is from where you are logging, from which device you are logging, whether that device is compatible to your application or not. So all this will be taken care by these two things, user risk, sign-in risk. And coming to privileged identity management, here we are providing the access temporarily. So we are not going to provide the permissions to any user permanently. Okay, if you want to provide any access to any user, we need to provide them the temporary. So we should not provide permanently. Okay, if his or her role is only for that, then we can go with permanent. If not, we can go for the temporary role allocation, and going forward, they can renew it or they can extend that permissions. I will show you. So conditional access, it is the same. So how you need to provide the access? Suppose if I want to assign a role to a particular person, what condition you need to get? So if you want to allocate a role, he need to have multi-factor authentication, or he want something else. So it may be anything. Microsoft multi-factor authentication contest. So there are so many things. So that we will discuss. So passwordless authentication. If you want to log in into any application without giving password, how you can log in into this application using your authenticator app. So that we will discuss in this one. And the next point which I have not highlighted here is self-service password reset. One second. Password reset. And the next one is different type of licenses. These two also we will be covering in this Azure Active Directory Identity Platform, or we can call it as Entra ID. So any questions in these things? Now it is open. You can ask me any question related to these things if you have not been followed.
This is related to I am identity access management, everything cover here or just little bit on?
Everything is covered as part of security.
Okay.
What is required as part of security, and we will be discussing with basics. So see, basics means it is till here. Okay. And all the other related stuff are related to the security.
Okay.
Any other question? So see, feel free to ask me any question. It may be silly or it may be not valid here. That is also fine. But if you have any questions, just ask me so that I can clarify and we can go further.
Shekhar, like silly, maybe I am wrong or right, I'm not sure. IAM total concepts cover, just clarification for some. ఇది ఐఏఎంలో పార్ట్ ఉంటుందా ఉండదా?
ఐఎంలో పార్ట్ ఉంటుందా అంటే నాకు అర్థం కాలేదు మీ క్వశ్చన్.
మామూలుగా ఐడెంటిటీ యాక్సెస్ మేనేజ్మెంట్ ఉంటుంది కదా, సెక్యూరిటీలోనే ఐడెంటిటీ యాక్సెస్ మేనేజ్మెంట్ కమింగ్ కదా. సో ఈ
ఇది
టాపిక్స్.
సి యాక్టివ్ డైరెక్టరీ. ఇప్పుడు ఇఫ్ సపోజ్ యు ఆర్ సేయింగ్ AWS లో మనం IAM అంటాం, GCP లో కూడా మనం IAM అంటాం, బట్ కమింగ్ టు Azure we call it as Active Directory, which is an identity and access management. మనం Azure లో మనం ఐడెంటిటీ అండ్ యాక్సెస్ మేనేజ్మెంట్ అనం, we call that one as Entra ID.
ఓకే ఓకే.
అంటే యూజర్ మేనేజ్మెంట్ మొత్తం Azure యాక్టివ్ డైరెక్టరీలోనే జరుగుతుంది. Identity and access management and Azure Active Directory is one and the same. That is the only terminology is the difference.
ఓకే ఓకే, గాట్ ఇట్. థ్యాంక్ యూ.
Any other questions? No questions?
So, are there any prerequisite skills required to continue with this training in terms of networking or cybersecurity?
See, prerequisites అనేవి, I don't believe in prerequisites. Okay. So what, from my point of view, if you want to learn any new technology, you need to have that anxiety. So what I'm going to learn. So before, suppose if I'm discussing some topic today, so yesterday itself you need to do some homework. So what is that, what we are going to discuss, so that you have that understanding before itself. So that whenever you come to the next class, you have a set of questions that you can ask me. Okay. So it is not something like that you need to learn something and you only, then only you need to go there. If you have that willing to understand the new concept and you are practicing on day-to-day basis, whatever we have discussed, and after that class, what we are going to discuss, if you have that some clarity, and if you are doing your own work in the backend, that is enough. So from my point of view, there is no prerequisite for this Azure security to learn. Just you need to understand the terminology. English, you need to understand what I'm saying. That's all.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay. So now let us move to the next concept, which is Azure Virtual Network, which we call it as VNets. So in AWS, we call it as a VPC, Virtual Private Cloud. In GCP also, we call it as the same, Virtual Private Cloud. So here, the first thing which we are going to understand is, what do you mean by a network? So if I want to say in a simple term, that what do you mean by a network? It is nothing but communication happening between two different devices. There you need to have a network. Suppose this is my laptop, this is your laptop, and I am sitting here and you are sitting here. And if you are able to listen me, and if I am able to listen to you, that is on the network. So in network, we have some basic knowledge we need to understand. So in network basics, what we will cover is, I think everyone know what do you mean by an IP address. What do you mean by a MAC address? What do you mean by public IP address? What do you mean by private IP address? What do you mean by a DNS? What do you mean by DHCP? And VPN. So these are some of the concepts which I think you already aware of. If you're not aware of, just I will give you an overview. So IP address is nothing but, for any device you need to identify using something, right? So how you identify a device? You identify a device by using something called as IP address. Okay. So if you want to identify any device on the network, then we will be using something called as IP address. Now coming to the MAC address. MAC address is nothing but for IP address, we call that one as logical address. When it comes to MAC address, we called it as a physical address. So we call that one as a physical address. So whenever you are identifying any device on the network, these two are getting binded. So how these two are getting binded? By using some protocol in the backend, we called it as address resolution protocol. So don't worry, I will explain you when we go into the network. So MAC address is nothing but in your laptop, you have a network interface, right? For that network interface, you have a address that is a unique address. From my laptop, I have a unique address. For your laptop, you have a unique address. So how many people are there here? Everyone is having a unique address for your network device. So if I want to show you my MAC address, 1 second, let me remove all these things so that it will be easy for you to understand. Okay. So now if I type here ipconfig space -all, you can see here I have a MAC address for my virtual adapter as well. And when it comes to my Wi-Fi adapter, I have another MAC address. So you can see for every interface which you have a different MAC address. MAC address is nothing but for every laptop you have a network device. For that network device, there will be an what I can say, the name you can say for network device. If there is a name, that name we call it as a MAC address. Okay, medium access control. MAC means medium access control. So this is about the MAC. Now, can anyone tell me what is the difference between public IP address and private IP address? Anyone? Any idea what do you mean by public IP address and what do you mean by private IP address?
Hi, as actually private IP address is only specific to those people who cannot access by the other outside the others.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, you can try. So it may be wrong or correct. That is fine. But you can try.
Public IP address, it will be visible for all, right? That thing once I know. Private IP, it will accessible only in our internal networks or somewhere.
Correct. So whenever you talk about public IP address, you can identify on the internet. Okay. You can identify public IP address on the internet. Okay. Example, I will tell you. If you are working for an organization, there will be two types of applications. One application will be for internet for external users, and some applications will be only for your internal organization. So that it should not be accessible by the internet. So I think you have seen that internal applications are within organization and external applications are to the public. Something like facebook.com, youtube.com, google.com, or any other stuff. But coming to the internal, no one knows what application you are using. So that is within your organization itself. Okay. So it will not identified over the internet. Simple statement. Public IP address, you can identify that one on the internet. Private IP address, it cannot identifier on the internet, it is only used for your internal purposes. Okay. That is about the public IP address and the private IP address. Now remembering multiple IP address is different, right? So if you have 5 different applications in your organization, you can remember. But on the internet, we have so many applications. So remembering those many IP addresses are difficult. So what we are doing is we are mapping our IP address to a name. That name we called it as a DNS. So if you are pointing your IP address to a particular name, that particular name we call it as a DNS, domain name service. So whatever the URLs you are seeing on the internet, something like www.google.com. So behind the google.com, you have multiple IP addresses. If you type www.facebook.com, so there also you have different IP addresses. See, now I'm sitting in India. So I will have one IP address. But if you are sitting in USA, or if you are sitting in London, or if you are sitting in any other location, the IP address may change. Okay. So we are not going to bother about the IP addresses which are there in the backend of your domain. We are just going to understand how my DNS is working. Okay. So after that, we will be understanding virtual network routing. So how the routing works in the network. That means if you want to connect from one device to another device, what should be my direction? So how my source will be connected to my destination. So there we will be discussing different scenarios. So here we will be discussing about the VPN. We will be discussing about the peering. We will be discussing about service endpoint, private endpoint. So we will be discussing about the Azure firewall. If you have multiple firewalls, how you need to manage multiple firewalls using Azure Firewall Manager. DDoS attacks and web application firewalls. See, DDoS attacks is nothing but if there is something is happening on your application. So normally if you are getting 10 to 15 requests on a day, but on that particular day, if you are receiving hundreds and thousands and lakhs of requests, behind that, we need to understand what is the reason. So if you want to prevent that type of activity on your application, what we do is we will be enable something called as DDoS protection, distributed denial of service. That means if you have one application and if this application is only able to handle around 50 users at a time, but if you are getting thousands of users on your application, what will happen? Your application may get slow or your application may go down entirely. So in order to prevent these type of situations, what we do is we will enable DDoS protection. And we are going to see the service firewall. Service firewall or perimeter firewall, we will be discussing. So firewall, I think you know what is the use of firewall. Firewall is nothing but whatever the traffic you need to allow into your network and what traffic you need to send out. That means something like what traffic you need to allow or what traffic you need to deny or restrict. So these are the things which we are going to discuss as part of network. Any questions related to the network? Any questions? No questions? Everything is clear? Any
Yes,
questions?
clear for me. Clear for me.
Okay. Okay. So going to the next concept. Okay. So next what we are going to discuss as part of this training. Okay. Coming to the next one is virtual machine. So I think you can read this one. So I'm not going to go step by step. So here what we are going to understand is how to protect your virtual machines from external world. Okay, that is very critical because our application is running on your virtual machines, on your Kubernetes cluster, or on your Docker instances. So how we are going to protect on that one? So whatever the data we are storing, how we are encrypting that data, how the encryption works. So we will understand what do you mean by symmetric encryption? What do you mean by asymmetric encryption? So I think you have heard about these algorithms, RSA, SHA-256, MD5, all these things. These are something related to our encryption. Okay. And how you need to manage the users and roles to these VMs. So all these things we will be discussing here. And here I have not added something. Here we are going to discuss how you need to protect your load balancers as well. So in load balancer, we will be discussing about two concepts. One is TLS, one is SSL. So something like PKI, public key infrastructure. So we will be discussing the entire concept of security related to the certificates also, which you are going to upload to your load balancer. So here we will be understanding. So whenever you provide the certificates, I think if someone is gained from database, what we will do? From your load balancer, we will have only to our application protection. From application to database, we don't have any certificates. So normally some organization, they will install the same certificates on their database as well, so that end-to-end encryption should be created. Okay, if you want end-to-end encryption, or if you want to have end-to-end security for your application, database, and everything, how we will be doing that one. So that one we called it as SSL offloading, secure socket layer offloading. So we will be discussing about these things also. Okay. So this is about the virtual machine. So I will show you how to create a virtual machine, how to protect your disk via using. So encryption, we have two types: Azure managed encryption and customer managed. Okay. So we will be seeing how we will manage from our own keys. Okay. How to delegate the permissions, how the application permission should work, how you need to give the access to the APIs to your Microsoft accounts, and all these things will be discussed. Any questions here? I think there is some question to someone. Any questions?
No.
Okay. The next one is key vault. Very important, very, what I can say, which we are using on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so these are the concepts which we normally use as part of security. So securing data using key vault. So key vault, what do you mean by key vault? how to administrate your key vault, how to take your key vault backup and recover. So anyone can tell me why we want to use key vault and what do you mean by key management system? Anybody have knowledge on this one or heard about this? If you have heard about this, why we want to use this one?
The first thing is to secure the password. Second one is the confidential providing access, like without password displaying, we can integrate with an key vault and just pass that values in the service applications. It will automatically authenticate. These type of things we will use the key vault.
Right, correct. So why we use is in order to store our secrets or sensitive data in your own machine or in any type of repositories, that is very danger in today's market where we have so many cyber crimes. So we can't store that one in a plain format. Okay. So what we are doing is we are creating a vault and we are storing all our sensitive data into that key vault. So just what you need to do is you need to just use something called as APIs in order to retrieve all your sensitive data from this key management system, or we called it as key vault in our Azure. Okay. And after that, we will be discussing about the storage account. Storage account, how you need to authenticate via AD authentication, Azure files with Windows authentication, Azure policies, resource logs, and Azure blueprints. So these are some of the advanced concepts while it comes to your data. So because storage account is nothing but where you are storing all your data. Okay. It may be your application backup, or it may be your application data, or if you are storing any type of data related to your organization. So that everything should be secured and it should not be accessible to any user. Only the authorized user need to access those data. So how we will do all these things in practical, we will be discussing on the key vault. Okay. Any questions here coming to the key vault? Any questions?
No.
Okay. So now coming to the last concept, which is monitoring your applications. So here I don't want to tell anything. Azure Monitor, what we will do, we will be monitoring all our applications. We will store the logs. We will have something called as analytical tools in order to. So I think you have heard about SIM tool, system information and event management. So we will be seeing how we will get the logs and how we will do the analysis of that logs and we can put it on a dashboard. Okay. So we'll be understanding how to log your data, how to keep that data for how much period of time, how to create the alerts. What do you mean by Azure Security Center? Security Center policy management. Security Center is nothing but it is a centralized place where you can monitor the entire security of your Azure portal or Azure platform. Okay. So these are the things which we are going to understand. And optional is if we have some time, we will be discussing about the Microsoft Sentinel, which is the advanced concept, which is the SOC analyst concept, which is there entirely for Azure. Azure Microsoft Sentinel is there as well as Sentinel-1 is there. But coming to the Sentinel, it is cloud native SIM tool. Okay, SIM tool, I think you have heard about Splunk. You had heard about QRadar. So all these things are the same, but I will give you some overview how exactly the Sentinel will work. So this is the concept which we are going to cover in our entire course of Azure Security. Okay, that's all. Now open to everyone. Any questions to me? You want any clarifications? If you want anything, just let me know.